Thank you all for joining us today for our website on enterprising nonprofits. My name is Sarah Lambertson, and I'm the Community Food Projects Coordinator for New Entry Sustainable Farming Project. I'll be the host today, and our presenters are Donald Summers and Chris Longston from Altruist Partners. They will do more of an intro once they get started, but I'm going to go over a couple of brief technical. So just a brief bit about who New Entry is. We are based in Massachusetts, and we do on-the-ground work with farmers here in the state on farmer training from food business planning class. Just a moment. Sorry about that. Do farmer training from farm business planning class all the way through an incubator farm and food hub and a CSA. We also coordinate 2 national networks providing technical support for incubator farms as well as organizations working in community food projects. And we received a training and technical assistance grant from the USDA to support applicants and grantees of the Community Food Projects Grant Program. And this webinar that we're hosting today is coming through that program. So if you're unfamiliar with our work there, you can take a look at our website. If you are interested in learning more about the grant program or the resources that we provide, I definitely encourage you to take a look there. We've got a lot of resources and links to other websites. We provide one-on-one assistance. We have webinars such as this and many recorded webinars, and I'm also available for any questions that you might have about what we offer, so please feel free to reach out to me. At this point, I am going to hand it over to our presenters. All right, Donald, so it should be all set for you now.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can everybody see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay. So I need to share my screen. To go. Thank you for the introduction, Sarah, and hello to everybody. Thank you for joining. It's my honor to present what I hope you'll find is some exciting information. Your work is extraordinarily valuable, and we at Altruist Partners very much are honored to give you ideas that we believe will accelerate your work and move you from survival and struggle to scale and sustainability. We believe the world will benefit when nonprofits scale and really grow at the rate of other organizations. And we want to present a series of ideas to you just as an introduction. This is a process that we've been working on for 10 years with nonprofits around the U.S. and the world, and it's really ready for prime time. It's battle tested, and we're working with New Entry. We've been assigned to work with New Entry from the Cedar Tree Foundation. We work with many of their grantees to help them accelerate. And we're reaching out to you in partnership with New Entry to say, what do you think about this? Do you find these ideas interesting? We're going to give you some practical tools that you can use today in the course of this hour discussion. We're going to go through a little bit of theory, and then we're going to get right into some practical stuff, and we're going to have a question and answer period. My partner, Chris Longston, and I will show you some examples and hopefully really engage back and forth with you about these ideas, which you may find challenging and different and difficult, frankly, and exciting. So with that introduction being said, again, this is hopefully the first of many future webinars. If at the end of this you circle back to Sarah and said, hey, I really found this valuable, let's do some more of that. So with that in mind, let's get started. we at Altruist seek to transform nonprofits into powerful social enterprises. What does that mean? Let's look at that. First of all, our social problems are enormous, yet the organizations that are confronting these social problems are tiny, and you have beliefs that keep them tiny. This is a quote from Dan Pallotta. Many of you might be familiar with his TED Talk or his seminal book, Uncharitable. There's a very long history in the United States of nonprofits suffering and staying small on purpose. And we're trying to break that 350-year legacy. Let's explore what that means. First of all, let's take a look at what the social sector is. Everyone who is in a nonprofit is part of a $1.5 trillion industry called the social sector or the nonprofit sector. It's enormous. There are 1.5 million organizations in this sector, but 4% of nonprofits have 85% of the money, and fewer than 200 nonprofits have grown past $50 million in revenue in the past 50 years, but 75,000 other organizations have. Let's unpack that a little bit. First, take a look at this red line in the middle. The bottom, the x-axis, is the percentage of population. The y-axis, the vertical, is the amount of revenue. So perfect, when 50% of the people have 50% of the money, we have perfect equality. U.S. household is the blue line. We've all heard about the 99%, and we have tremendous inequity, growing inequity in the United States and even around the world. This is what that equity, that inequality curve looks like. And you can look over and see that a few households in the United States, the 1%, have about 70 or 35% of the wealth. That's extraordinary. Now let's take a look at the green line. Even more inequity. Hospitals and universities, this is the 4% of nonprofits in the United States that have 85% of the money. What's left over? There's 1 million small nonprofits out there between about 50 or 100,000 and $10 million in revenue. Those are the ones that aren't growing. And again, you look back up in that statistic and say very few, only a handful, have broken out of that small stage. This is brutal reality that we're trying to fix, and we can fix it. With that perspective, let's move forward. There's two sectors. We hear about the for-profit and the nonprofit sector. We believe it's flawed. The for-profit sector is associated with measurements, and it's very scalable, and it makes lots of money. The nonprofit sector is, of course, where all people like ourselves are trying to, we're do-gooders. People trust us because we work in nonprofits. We're not in it for the money. And we have incredible power in the nonprofit sector because we're tax-free and people can give us money. But this bifurcation, this separation between for and nonprofit is deeply problematic. For-profits, as we know, are not sustainable. We talk about needing 8 planet Earths to support our resource consumption. We all know about the problems with industrial agriculture. This isn't working, and you folks are working very hard to try and fix that. However, nonprofits are too small. If everyone unmuted themselves right now, you'd shout yes to the answer of a question, do you need to get bigger to solve the problems that you're confronting? People are struggling at the margins of the problems that they're addressing, but growth is so difficult. This is something that observers call the schizophrenia of capitalism. We have the heating and the air conditioning on at the same time. The big scalable organizations are doing lots of damage, and the organizations that are fixing it are too small. Good news. There's a way forward. We call it the social enterprise way. What happens when you put both of these things together? You get organizations on the nonprofit side and even on the for-profit side, like B Corps, social purpose corporations. We even have incredible for-profit companies like Tesla. They're metrics-driven. They're highly scalable. They need to get big. They really know how to make money. but they're also doing it for the right reasons. And in the case of nonprofits, there's a small but growing number of nonprofits that are using all of the tools of industry for altruistic purposes. And let's talk about what that is. And this is just background, but as we move into this, you will see that there's specific things that you can use right now and you can develop over time to break you out of that slow growth or no growth struggle. Let's start. Let's look at what that means. How do we go from a nonprofit to social enterprise? Maybe I'm a small community-supported agricultural program, or I have a food program. I know that I'd love to get bigger, but I don't know how. I've got a great program, but I'm constantly confronting the challenges of money, finance, staffing. There's not enough resources to do my work. What do I do? Start by thinking about money and scale, not just your programs. And then you measure your scale and the good that you're doing compared to the entire problem that you're confronting. You've got to get your head into the space of thinking, I'm going to solve a problem, not just survive. There's 3 management tools that we've developed over a decade of testing. These management tools are very, very common in the for-profit sector, and they're very unusual in the nonprofit sector, and they're very powerful. Even for small, volunteer-driven organizations, you can use simple versions of these tools to move forward at dramatically new rates of success. We call it a performance flywheel, a high-performance flywheel. You have a business plan, you have a revenue pipeline, and you have an operational dashboard. And if you start slowly, you will accelerate using these 3 pieces to surround your program with a complete financial management and organizational platform, and you'll help your program accelerate. Let's start with what a business plan looks like. We like to joke, it's actually kind of a cruel joke. We say at Altruist, great crime has been done in the name of strategic planning. Most strategic plans are not specific. They sit on shelves. They don't provide traction points for an organization. But everybody thinks they need a strategic plan. Let's get a business plan instead. What are the 4 hallmarks of a business plan? We call them the 4 C's. It's comprehensive, compelling, concrete, and concise. These are the questions that a business plan asks. Conspicuously, I'd like everyone to note that mission, vision, and values does not appear. Frankly, we at Altruist believe your mission and your vision and your values are rather irrelevant. We all share the same values. Visions are very imprecise, and missions are often so vaguely worded as to be useless. We ask a different set of questions that we're going to ask you on this call today. Let's start by the most important question. What problem are you solving? Alternatively, you could be adding joy if you're an arts group or an opera, but typically we're solving problems. How can you prove that you're the best org in the space? What's success look like? We talk about big, hairy, audacious goals, a phrase, an acronym made famous by Jim Collins. How do you solve 100% of the problem? How does your program create the success? How do you pay for things? How do you market it? What's your financial projection look like? What's your org chart, your bios, your board? And here's the tricky part. You got to get all this into 10 pages. You have to take the time to make it short. That's in very high level, rapid outline what a business plan looks like. And we're going to take a look at what a pipeline looks like and what a dashboard looks like. And then we're going to get started on some business plan questions. This is a first aspect of a pipeline. You should be masterful at understanding how to raise money in all 5 revenue domains: individuals, foundations, corporations, government agencies, and earned income. And you can see there's many subcategories of those domains right here. You should know what income goal you need, how many prospects you need, how you're going to identify cultivate, engage, report back to those people how many staff, volunteers, and budget you need. This is typically expertise we provide to our clients, but we're here to tell you that most charities are stuck because they follow very low return, very high labor, very ineffective revenue generation techniques. They try they mail junk, they send out appeal letters, they try transactional fundraising events such as auctions or galas, they write grants all day long. These things don't work. Hospitals and universities use what we call face-to-face, relationship-based major gift fundraising. We prefer to call that major investment fundraising, and it's our job to enable even small organizations to capture that power. And we start by helping our organizations we work with chart out these strategies. A lot of numbers here, but let me walk you through it very quickly. This is called, once you have those strategies, we measure them very carefully. 1 through 6 are numbers, very shorthand numbers to describe what stage your relationship with your investment prospect is in. 1 is for identification. You know that they have potential to help you, but you haven't spoken to them yet. 2, you're talking to them. We call that engaging. 3, you're appealing to them. 4, they say, yes, I'd love to help you, but you don't have a check yet. 5, they say no. 6, they've given you a check, and it's your job then to report back to them. Don't ask them for money right away. You tell them what you've done. So those are the 6 investment stages. These are the 5 revenue domains, as we've said before. And you've got, everybody's a people, all people are people. There's no real difference between a person in a corporation and a person in a foundation or an individual philanthropist, but you appeal to them differently. So those are your different revenue segments. And you'll notice that we measure every 2 weeks the most successful social enterprises take a very disciplined, focused approach to measuring the conversations they have with investment prospects in each of these revenue domains. This is how every high-performing nonprofit raises money. And the truth is it's confined mostly to hospitals and universities. That's why they have the money. And we can see here the entities moving through the relationship pipeline, and you're comparing your progress every 2 weeks with how you're doing. This is an organization that is very small, it's very modest, but it's tracking in a very disciplined way exactly whom it is speaking to about its goals. You actually, if you're really paying very careful attention, you can track the amount of dollars that you have in each of these stages. Now, there's some nuance behind this. How do you track and record and put down dollars and come up with these cash flow projections? That's a little bit more detailed than we have to get into on this call. It's certainly something we can cover in future discussions, but we're here to say even a small nonprofit, if it's using this system, can come up with accurate cash flow projections every 12 months. And it tracks what we call KPIs, key performance indicators. Your revenue versus goal is your first KPI. How much money have we raised versus how much do we need to raise? How many contacts could we make if everybody is engaged? An executive director can do 5 a week. A board member can do 1 a month. A full-time relationship officer can do 15 a week. And you do an inventory through your entire organization. Maybe volunteers can do 3 a month. You start with what you have, and then you measure it very carefully, and you say, hey, we're at 50% of our potential contact level, or 75. How can we do better in this next 2-week period? So this is a very rapid-fire overview of a simple yet fairly detailed way to track your revenue activity. We don't send junk mail. We don't beg for money at auctions. We have very deliberate, face-to-face conversations with people who care and who can invest in us. It's a completely different philosophy. Finally, the
Hey,
third
Donald.
leg of the stool. Yes.
Just a quick note for those in attendance, KPI is a key performance indicator for someone who's not aware of that.
Thank you, Chris. And again, we're noticing people have probably figured out that we're using, we often have people say, oh gosh, you're using a lot of business jargon. And we say, absolutely. You want to talk the language of money. You want to raise money? Learn there's about 20 phrases, not much more than a couple dozen. Key performance indicator, financial projection, what's a metric, what's a business plan. These are concepts and tools that are fundamental to how the economy functions. So we use them unabashedly. When we look and sound like any other type of high-performing, high-growth enterprise, guess what? It helps us raise money. The nonprofit sector has been inventing its own revenue ideas and its own revenue culture, and it doesn't work. So that's why you'll come across some new phrases and ideas here. Another common tool in high-performing organizations is a dashboard, an executive dashboard. You have a business plan that says we're going to grow. You answer those questions. You have a revenue pipeline which tracks your conversations with individuals across those revenue domains. And then finally, you have a dashboard that says, how are we doing? Just like the dashboard in your car, you're just glancing down at it. It doesn't have a lot of information on it, but it's giving you the most important stuff to making sure your organization's going in the direction that you've planned. And there's 4 elements to a dashboard. Quantity, how much of the problem are you solving right now? If you say, for example, there's 7,000 people in my community below the federal poverty line who don't have access to healthy food, we're serving 500 of them right now, and we want to serve 7,000. So your first key performance indicator is quantity. How many people are we reaching? Then we have other key performance indicators on quality. Are we delivering healthy food? Is it affordable? Is there enough of it? How fresh is the food? Or is it organic? You might, how many people respond to us saying they are highly satisfied with our programs? They're highly reliant on our service. You may choose your own measures of quality, but you track them very specifically each month with your dashboard. Finally, we have finance. You can simply track your budget versus actual and the numbers of cash, numbers of month of cash reserve that you have in the bank. And then you have your revenue, your forecasted revenue and the number of face-to-face contacts you make. Now, this is a lot of information. Nonprofits aren't accustomed to having business plans, revenue pipelines and dashboards, but they're highly effective, very, very powerful tools, and hopefully this gives you a very good overview. Let's actually start looking specifically at who's used them, first of all. Altruist has, again, 10 years of doing this with hundreds of, about 100 nonprofits all around the United States and around the world. Some of these names you may recognize, some you won't, but this even small struggling nonprofits, if they're committed to the process, can successfully execute. This is actual client data, actual budget data. Many of our clients, many of the people we work with really are in a no growth or very slow growth scenario. And when you put your business plan into place and you launch it with a revenue pipeline and monitor it with a dashboard, we've found consistent what we call revenue hockey sticks. It's not about the money. It's about changing the world for the better. But when you use these tools, you raise more money. And because you're very intentional with how you use that money, and you can show your investors, notice I don't say donors, I say investors. When you show your investors how well you're doing and you show them results, they come back for more. So don't eke out survival, grow. Grow as big as you need to be to solve the problem. These are the tools to get you there. We'll get started. We can actually go through some examples here, and we'll have a significant amount of time for question and answer. But here's what we found after a decade of doing this work. The process is hard. Getting a business plan, a pipeline, and a dashboard in place, it's not easy, but it's exciting. It's certainly a path forward. We know it works. And when people say, gosh, you know, that's a lot of work, we say, what are you doing right now? Most nonprofits are very, very challenged just to stay alive, and even the hope of a pathway towards sustainability and scale can be encouraging. We don't underestimate how challenging it is to adopt this managing methodology, but we know other nonprofits can do it. If you haven't read these books and you work in the social sector, you're missing some very, very important information. Jim Collins wrote Good to Great and Great by Choice. These are wonderful books. His work in the nonprofit sector is not nearly as good, ironically enough. But Ken Stearns with Charity for All and Dan Pallotta's Uncharitable, extraordinarily important. And then I really recommend 4 Disciplines of Execution for how the highest performing organizations manage their data and their results. Finally, the criteria for success that you all would have to bring to this work, and many of you already possess these, but for successfully capturing a business plan, executing a revenue pipeline, and monitoring a dashboard, we have to have optimism to believe that we can solve the problem, the courage to go for it, the grit to recover from our mistakes, the focus and discipline to measure these pieces that we don't feel like measuring. It's hard work. We like to say the business plan is your gym membership. Gym memberships can go in the drawer. They're not going to do you any good. Your revenue pipeline is your workout sheet, and your dashboard, your monthly visit to the doctor. It's very much like getting in shape. And we like to also really say, gosh, these problems are urgent, because they are. Let's get started. Hopefully that's enough of an overview. We're going to have a Q&A session in a little bit, but I'd like everyone on the webinar to think about these 3 questions. We're going to really dive in and have some interactivity. We've kept the lecture piece to only about 25 minutes, and we want to take the rest of this discussion to really think about what's this look like. So instead of your mission and vision and values, think about these questions for your organization. What problem are you solving? You notice we don't say, what problem are you nibbling around the edges at, or how are you surviving? This is a very optimistic, courageous frame. What problem are you solving? Think about that. Secondly, what does success look like? If you have unlimited resources, what would you do with it? This is a thought experiment. Imagine I'm Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or I have the keys to Fort Knox. You have all the money. You can spend it any way you want. What does success look like? Be concrete in your definition of success. Be specific. Be concise. Thirdly, how will you actually find those resources? How will you go about it? So think about that for a few minutes, and we'll go into some examples. Let's move in, actually. I'm sure everyone has some ideas that hopefully this has prompted some questions or sparked some new ways of looking at your organization. Let's take a look at some examples. I'm going to run through a nonprofit response to these 3 questions, and then we'll look at the enterprise response to these 3 questions. Let's look at the first question. What problem are you solving? Read with me what a typical nonprofit response says. The Yummy Food Project's mission is to create a thoughtful and productive community of youth and adults from diverse backgrounds who work together to build a sustainable food system. Our community produces healthy food for residents of the city and suburbs, provides youth leadership opportunities, and inspires and supports others to create change in their own communities. If I'm someone who hears nonprofit missions all the time, this kind of puts me to sleep. Let me be blunt. It's got a lot of warm fuzzies in there, but I don't see anything particularly that jumps out at me. We live in an age of information overload. This is a lot of non-specific language, and you really got to grab people if you want them to pay attention. Plus, everybody's got a mission. Yet another nonprofit with a mission. Please, you sound and look like everybody else in the space. It's going to be very hard to get people to wake up and pay attention. Let's take a look at an alternative. The YFP is transforming Kentucky. In 10 years, every Kentuckian will enjoy affordable, local, delicious, sustainably grown food, healthier, happier people, and a booming economy with opportunity for all will result. This is a much more ambitious, much more growth-oriented, much more concise, much more aspirational way to state up front. You don't get involved with lots of value language. You say, right, this is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to put a specific timed goal right up front. We're not even going to talk about our mission. We're going to say what problem we're solving, how long it's going to take, and what's going to happen. Let's look at another aspect of this. What does success look like? Nonprofit. We envision a world where youth are active leaders, diverse communities feel connected to the land and each other, and everyone has access to fresh, local, healthy, affordable food. These are excellent sentiments. We love the ideas here, but to someone, a skeptical investor, you envision it. What do these things mean? There's no measurements around them. It sounds very dreamy and distant. Exactly what's going to happen here, we don't know. These are just feelings. We're not really saying what we're going to do. Look at a different lens on this. An enterprise would respond by saying, today we reach 5% of Kentucky citizens with healthy, affordable local food. 10 years will grow our reach to 95%. Again, very goal-oriented, very measure-oriented, and gives people a very courageous and aspirational look at what the organization proposes to do. And it gets people's attention. Here's the big difference. How do we pay for everything? And I'm fairly sure this will resonate to folks who struggle for money in the nonprofit sector. We write dozens of grants, changing our language for each funder. We send out lots of appeal letters asking folks for money. We push our board members to raise funds, and we work hard at fundraising events, selling things to people we really don't know very well. This describes about 96% of the fundraising activity in the nonprofit sector. And it's exactly why very few nonprofits grow. The way they raise money will allow them subsistence living at best. You survive, but you don't thrive. A really very difficult way to live. Here's what an enterprise organization would approach the idea of revenue generation. We have a compelling business plan. It's a draft which we shape with continuous input from our leaders in our community. We look at we are excited about the great things that large investments, notice we don't say gifts, large investments in our work would make possible. So we talk to as many potential investors as we can, measuring the quality and quantity of our conversations with a pipeline, and we use our dashboard to report to all investors what we've done with their money. Specific, transparent, and accountable. And this is what raises money. This is fact. So with that brief overview, my partner, Chris, and I will answer your questions. Please feel free to challenge this, ask the hard questions, send a chat to Sarah, and she will call on you and unmute yourself, and either Chris or I will answer your question. And again, I will add, while we're taking questions, this works for nonprofits. This system has worked for nonprofits in every field, not just the environment, but arts, health, human services, the environment, as well as education. So we look forward to your questions. Please fire away.
We've got Winona would like to speak up. Winona, if you'd like to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask a question.
I'm familiar with dashboards.
Winona, could you start again? Sorry, we didn't catch the beginning. Could you start again, Winona?
Okay, I'm sorry. I said, so my question is, I started off in the business world. I know everything that you're saying works. I've done that for years, project management professional, all of that, and now I run a nonprofit. However, the challenge that I see in implementing some of the things that I know work is that I have such a small staff, and I'm so stretched as it is, and I know a lot of these tools take a lot of effort to put into place and then to also maintain. How do you do that? How have you helped your clients do that?
Winona, that's a great question and one that we see all the time. It's a big challenge with small nonprofits. The key really is to get started. You can start small with the capacity you have, and then as additional revenue starts to come in through this process, very important to continue to invest in your growth. You will need more staff to support this process, no doubt, but resist the temptation to funnel all of that revenue back into direct service and make sure you're investing in your growth engine as well. But it's okay to start from where you're at now.
Exactly right, Chris. Winona, if you don't have enough staff, you take a business plan to prospective investors. If you can prove what you're doing is valuable, if you're solving an important problem, we find the investors who care and show them how you're going to spend the money and what your growth track would look like. And you have those conversations, raise the funding, and then get yourself out of the situation in which you have too much work and too few people. It's bootstrapping is one way to do it. You just work and put aside enough money to hire people. Maybe there's a potential major investor who could give you a large influx of capital so you could hire more people. We often tell our clients, don't, again, as Chris said, don't just spend all the money on program staff. You'll need administrative assistants, relationship officers. Don't fall prey to that overhead myth. That's very, very destructive. But that growth path is one that we've charted with dozens of nonprofits successfully. It does work. Often we advise clients through that day-by-day, week-by-week, month-by-month process. We just want to let you know here that it's possible and really gauge this community's interest in learning more about it. Great question.
Yeah.
Was that helpful?
So we've got a couple more questions have come in. So the next question is, this is from Ernest. Suppose your work is to involve several organizations in a regional approach. How might that change your scenario? How might that scenario change your approach?
Great question. That gives you what the business world would call leverage, more powerful appeal. You simply look at these entities as various units of the same overall organization. If you can say specifically how much money these organizations are spending together, what results they're producing, how much money you need to capture even more of these results, think and act like one organization. If you can plan together and you can chart your outcomes together, and you can show that doesn't matter where we're going to organization A or B, we have connected models. We call it the 1 + 1 = 3 approach. You can often raise far more money working together than you would individually. So it's a very powerful approach, but you have to show that you're not wasting effort. And again, having a very concise organizational a business plan that connects those organizations together, you then have the conversations with investors. Often people with large amounts of capital don't want to get involved with small organizations because they don't think it's going to do much good. But if you band together, all of a sudden you look bigger. You're able to solicit more money. So it's a very powerful approach.
All right, the next question is, can you explain the key performance indicators and how you integrate them into a strategic plan?
Yeah, when we say key performance indicators, what we're looking for are a handful of measurements that get at the core of what you're trying to accomplish. If you think about all the different measurements you could come up with, there are probably dozens of them. We want to boil it down to just a very few that really are representative of what the organization is trying to accomplish, and then make sure we can measure those on an ongoing basis. Donald gave you some examples earlier. Very important to boil your program down to just a few measurements of success, and then make sure you can gather that data. And sometimes that's a challenge out of the gate as well. You may have to put measurement systems in place to gather that data, and that's okay too. The important thing is to make sure that you are measuring that data and reporting to your stakeholders on a regular basis via the dashboard.
Exactly right. And again, remember, there's 4 baskets of key performance indicators that we put into a dashboard. The first is size. How big are you versus how big you need to be? What percentage of the problem are you solving? That's your first KPI. Many organizations say, well, yes, we do wonderful work, but they don't really measure how big the problem is and how much of the problem they're solving. It's too scary. Well, take a courageous approach, measure your geographic scope. You get to pick how much of the problem you want to solve. That's your first key performance indicator. How much of the problem are we solving? The second is, how well are we solving the problem? Just because you do something doesn't mean you're moving the needle. Are you actually making people's lives healthier and happier? How do you know? How can you prove it? The third key performance indicator is, how financially healthy are you? Are you on track with your budget? How many months of cash do you have in the bank? You should have 6. And fourth, your key performance is your revenue projection and the number of face-to-face contacts with your prospective investors. So after having worked with many, many nonprofits over the years, we've helped develop, these are the key performance indicators that will keep your organization on track. Take the time to select just a few. Too many results in information overload.
And reporting those key performance indicators, they serve 2 purposes. One, as Donald just mentioned, keep your organization on track, but also give your investors confidence that you know what you're doing and you are progressing towards accomplishing that problem that you're addressing.
And then that creates transparency, and that scares people. We have to put down, what if we make mistakes? What if we don't make progress? Be honest about it. Open up your business plan, open up your organization, ask for help. People will forget. How do we build trust with other people? We admit our mistakes. We admit our challenges. Most nonprofits give everybody, the public, nothing but sweetness and light. Oh, we're doing a great job. We know it isn't true, but they're not being intellectually honest. Your dashboard gives people an insider's look at how you're doing, your struggles, your challenges. This is difficult work. Share the difficulty. Get people to help you.
All right, the next question we have is, many community food systems by necessity will be small. Does this model apply to limited growth situations?
Amen. Absolutely. Define how big you need to be. Doesn't mean you don't need to be intergalactic. But how many people in your community do you need to serve? It's going to be a specific number. Pick that number. Every community has people in poverty, people suffering from diseases caused by bad food. What does success look like? Measure that, and then chart a path to that success. You don't need to be big. Many community-based organizations still need to grow. They don't need to be gigantic, but they certainly need to be bigger. You set your targets. We're just trying to give you a very practiced, proven way of getting to your goals. Oh, by the way, make sure you pay your people, pay your staff well, charge what you need to charge. There's many aspects to being a healthy organization, and it's not all about being gigantic.
And this approach will help you to have a much more sustainable revenue stream over time. Make you less dependent on those tactical events and mailers and the impersonal approach that so many organizations use.
All right, the next one we have is, what would you recommend as a strategy to initiate culture change or shift in a nonprofit that historically operated as a traditional nonprofit, meaning small, altruistic, well-meaning, but not effective with a capital E?
Change is tough. Everybody, that's the difference between our successful clients and our unsuccessful partners is, are you ready to change? We're very blunt about that. We look for two qualities. Are you hungry or are you in pain? Preferably both. If an organization is comfortable with its status quo and is not really interested in being truly effective or efficient or growing, there's nothing we can do about it. All the tools in the world won't stick. We've got to have leadership. We've got to have passion. I'm going back to those 6 qualities: courage, grit, optimism, urgency, focus, discipline. You need those pieces. And the change management process around this is unique to every organization. There's no magic bullet. We find that nonprofit leaders and volunteers and board members who really care, who are truly driven by their altruism, by their desire to do more, can adopt this system and can be effective. We're very blunt about it. We like to market, look, we're all going to die. And we want to leave this world a better place for our children and their children. What are we going to do about it? Let's have a gut check here. There's no magic bullet here. This isn't easy. Nobody said it was easy, but it sure beats the alternative. So we don't have an easy, simple answer for that very, very good question.
All right, the next question. The problems my organization addresses are realistically not going to be solved in 10 years. Investors might not find solving issues related to hunger and poverty realistic in 10 years. How do we handle this with this model? How does a university that provides ongoing education handle this?
Well, the time frame we typically recommend is just 5 years. The time frame is one you set. It should be long term. For example, right now we're working with the Forest Stewardship Council. This is a global environmental organization running in 50 countries. They're trying to stop deforestation. What they're saying is, look, we're going to double our market share. We're going to double the global market for forest products is, we have 10% of that. We want to get to 20% in 5 years. They're setting an ambitious but achievable goal. So maybe you're not solving the problem. What we really advise against is don't set a safe incremental goal. Life is too short. Our problems are too difficult. And again, remember, whatever goal you set, it's a draft. Remember, you're not selling your business plan to people. You're taking them a draft and saying, is this the right goal? How aggressive should we be as a community? Use the wisdom of the crowd. Don't go to people and ask them to fund your business plan. Ask them, is this the right goal? Do you think we could achieve this? Get feedback from all of your stakeholders. Don't take forever, but you'll find that you'll set on something that's aspirational yet achievable. We like to say, gosh, if you set a aggressive growth pattern and it's 5 or 10% achievable, go for it. If you only get halfway there or 3/4 of the way there, you've still grown a lot and it's celebratory. No one's going to take away your birthday for not hitting 100% of an ambitious goal. But that goal setting process is something we do together as communities. And it's different for every community. Again, there's no rigid answer. This is just a general trajectory. Hospitals and universities have very ambitious programs, and because they're big and exciting, they attract big, exciting dollars. They attract large investments because they're doing something large and exciting, and they're credible. Even small organizations, little tiny companies pop up out of nowhere and raise millions of dollars all the time. They're mostly little software companies and startups. Nonprofits can do the same thing if they've got a good idea, strong leadership, and a compelling plan.
All right, we've got one more question has come in, which I'll read off. We probably have time for another one or two if there are any more out there. But this final question is, we are a small program within a large organization. Typically, administration handles the personal contacts. What approach can we take to identify and begin making face-to-face contacts with potential investors?
Great question. You really want to enroll the cooperation of the rest of your organization. This is an organization-wide approach. You have to talk. You have to be transparent about your costs, about what you're doing, where the organization is going. If you're just a small program within another organization, I would first have you ask these questions internally. Where are we going in 5 years? Where's our financial projection? What are our performance indicators? I'd like to start talking to people and raising money, but I want to be transparent and accountable. I want to be honest. We want to have some exciting goals. And I don't want a lengthy, vague strategic plan without any numbers, without any accountability. I need something short and really tight. Can we get to something like this? Let's just write up a draft. Often change is best happens from within. So if I'm part of a bigger organization and I believe in this gospel and it's been proven to work, I start having these conversations with my organizational leadership. If you ask these 3 business questions and they can't answer it, maybe you help them answer it. That's step 1. Then step 2, once the organization is committed to really having a high candor, courageous, scary conversations with community stakeholders. How are we going to solve this problem? You know, what we're doing isn't enough. How do we get better? That's when the exciting things happen, when the leadership is truly committed. Now, you look at organizations like the Red Cross right now, where leadership is dishonest, where they're running from accountability, where they're hiding the ball, where they lie about what they achieve. And I'm being very blunt. The Red Cross is in the grip of some terrible leadership right now. You can't fix bad leadership. And I'm not saying this works for every organization. You have to have very passionate, courageous, high-integrity leaders to have this type of conversation. And it's not in every organization, but the good news is most of the people who work in the nonprofit sector are beautiful people who embrace this stuff.
Very important to have this be an organization-wide focus. Too many nonprofits have a fundraising arm that is very separate from their programs. And this is not a fundraising process. This is a change in the way you operate throughout the organization. So it's critical to have everybody on board.
That's the most important point that we've said this whole hour. This is not about raising money. This is about being a high-performing organization. You don't chase money. If you perform well, if you can show that you perform well, and you take the time to build relationships with people, and you take the time to solicit investment, the money happens as a result. People will invest in you because you're not begging for money, you're not spinning, you're being honest, you're sharing your mistakes, and you're learning and you're asking for help. We like to, the highest performing organizations are the most ethical. There's one more slide here. we're almost at the end of our time, I'll say that this is just a test. These are new ideas for many people in the social sector, and we're delighted to work with New Entry on the potential to do more of these. So if you'd like to go into future webinars on business plans, on pipelines, on dashboards, we can look at case studies. We can go into individual topics. We can make this an online course. Altruist is very committed to doing what we can to help you. And again, even start a cohort. You could have a group of regional organizations write their own business plans and test them with each other. We're experimenting with this work ourselves. This can go any direction you want it to. Some of you may not have enjoyed this or don't feel that this information is applicable, and that's okay. We don't expect this to appeal to everyone because it's strong medicine. But if you like what you've heard, get back to Sarah and let her know that you'd like to do some more of this, and we'll start a dialogue, and we'll plan for some hopefully helpful future conversations.
And I will, after this webinar, I'll send out a recording of the webinar today, as well as a survey for feedback. And in there, I'll put some questions about this. So that's, feel free to reach out to me directly, but you're also able to reach out through the survey and provide the feedback on what you'd be interested in seeing in the future, and any thoughts you had on today. So I just want to say a big thank you to Donald and Chris. I really appreciate you putting this on today. New Entry is, as they've mentioned, going through this process, and we're really enjoying the process so far and finding it really interesting. So hopefully all of you found this sort of an interesting snapshot of what is possible and what the resources are, and a little bit of how to begin working that way. So again, feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I will put my email in the chat so that you can send me emails directly. It's right there on the screen as well. But just a big thank you to all of you, and to Donald and Chris.
Thank you, Sarah, and again, thanks to everyone on this call for the incredibly valuable work that you're doing.
Yes, thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
All right, have a great day, everyone.